Now, since we have seen already how can we configure a Splunk component as a searcher and also how to configure a Splunk component as an indexer, let us go through how we can configure our heavy forwarder, that is making an instance to receive data and forward it without storing any of those data. The heavy forwarder functionality we already know from our previous modules or our previous discussions on heavy forwarder, that it parses the data that it is received from the universal forwarder and it sends it to the indexers. We need to do a similar step of adding a receiver on specific port that we have seen 3 ways of doing it in our indexer configurations. Now, for adding the receiver a specific port, I'll be using a simple method, that is Splunk Web Console. This is our heavy forwarder instance. That is 8000 port. So probably we should be able to do it with our CLI itself. Let me log in. Let me log into my application account, that is Splunk. Okay. Now OPT Splunk bin Splunk. We all know by now that how to configure receiver using Splunk CLI. Let me run the command enable listen. This step we have performed the same in configuring in indexer. We are enabling listener of Splunk for port 9997. It is asking for my Splunk credentials. It says listening for Splunk data, that is Splunk data on port 9997. We have configured receiver now. We can go ahead and check in our web. Settings, forwarding and receiving. It should be under receiver. Say 9997. This is our heavy forwarder instance. We have successfully set up the functionality of receiving the logs. Now we know the other two methods. If you have still difficulty in figuring out the other two methods, probably you can revisit the indexer configuration video, from where you will be able to see what are the other two methods, that is the web and directly editing the configuration files. Now we'll be moving to creating a forwarder, like forwarding the data that has been received from universal forwarder and parse it and forward to the external, which is the second functionality of our heavy forwarder. For configuring forwarder, we have again 3 different methods. We'll be going through them one by one. The first method is of course by Splunk web or the GUI. Go to settings, forwarder and receiving. You will be revisiting the same page. Click on configure forwarding or click on add new. You'll go through configure forwarding so that we'll see there is nothing before. We'll click on new and enter the host and the port where we need to send the logs. We know the port, that is 9997. The host is our indexer. Let us grab the indexer. The port is 9997. We know because during our indexer configuration we have enabled receiving on 9997. This will be our forwarding port. Click on save. So this should give the functionality of heavy forwarder to do the job of initial parsing and sending it to your indexer. There are other functionalities like routing of events, masking your data, filtering your data, which will be looking at the later part of our tutorials. For configuration perspective, this is how we place an AV forwarder so that it receives the logs and it sends it to the our indexer. To understand our second method, we'll just delete this configuration. We'll re-add the same configuration using second method, that is our CLI. Now we have deleted the configuration. Log into our Splunk AV forwarder instance. Go to OPT Splunk utility. The command would be, for adding indexer in the previous tutorial, while learning configuring searcher, we used search server. Here it will be forward server. That is, it is forwarding the logs to a server, that is your indexer on port 9997. So it says added forwarding to this IP on this port. Let us refresh this page. We should be able to see those configuration. Yes, the configuration has appeared from configured from our Splunk CLI. Let's see how we can do this using editing the configuration files.